My name is Steve Ciampaglia, and I'm going to present the Street Arcade, creating social justice video games as a platform for community dialogue. I'm one half of the Plug-in Studio. The Plug-in Studio is a socially engaged new media art collective comprised of me and media artist Kerry Richardson. We collaborate with young people and adults in diverse communities to make art with technology, including video games, interactive sculpture, automata, and augmented reality graffiti. The Plug-in Studio was named a 2015 Fellow for Socially Engaged Art by A Blade of Grass. This nationally competitive fellowship provided $20,000 of financial support for the Street Arcade project. We spent the summer of 2015 collaborating with 13 African American teen artists from Chicago's South Side to create a series of social justice art video games. The centerpiece of the Street Arcade was the culminating event that took place at Hyde Park Art Center on a warm evening at the end of the summer. We constructed an outdoor video arcade, projecting the games in large scale onto the facade of the Art Center building. Family, friends, and neighbors passing by lined up to play the video games on custom-built retro arcade-style cabinets installed on the sidewalk. The Street Arcade used the games and the outdoor event as a platform for dialogue. As community members lined up to play, the teens engaged them in discussions about the issues they chose as themes for the games. I want to show you a short film about the Street Arcade produced by A Blade of Grass and Rava Films, the production company best known for their artist profiles featured on PBS's R21 series.
Games are really important to teenagers today, and they're a big part of their social life, a big part of the way that they kind of share culture. It represents communities of color, and it represents women in these very problematic ways, right? There are these very narrow, stereotypical kind of representations.
Not a lot of programmers are people of color, and so you have these white people just programming these games off of stereotypes. Black guys stealing cars and like selling drugs. A lot of times there's no women involved with all of this.
The Street Arcade is a collaborative new media project. We worked with 13 teenagers from the south side of Chicago to create a series of social justice video games. And these games were then used as a platform for community dialogue.
We asked them to think of social issues that were important to them or meaningful to them that they wanted to share, such as racial profiling, police brutality, immigration.
The way the template is, there's no guy chasing you. But I was looking at what you wrote down in your plan, and you mentioned in there, you can correct me if I'm wrong, about getting to the border, to the fence by daybreak.
We had our expertise in programming and in game design and as artists, and the teens brought their expertise from their own lives and their own experiences.
This is about life and making choices in life. This is my main character, Kyle, which is who looked like me, which is really me.
You can't talk about police brutality and have it fit into something very simple, and you can't talk about white privilege, right? And that was really hard to figure out. How do you talk about that in a game? We wanted people to learn to make their own images and their own representations and take these games and put them out in the world. So one of the teens, Noah, he had suggested an idea for a game.
The objective is to avoid the zombies, and you see that door back there? You're supposed to try to get through that door so you can leave the room and basically survive. If you play as the white character, you take a certain amount of damage. The door in the back actually opens so that you're able to leave. But for the black character, that unfortunately never happens. And the metaphor is kind of sort of like the superior race gets more opportunities than the minority race does.
That to me is like this really effective moment where the game is engaging people and putting them into this place where they're forced to kind of consider this issue.
Basically, right now you're in the brain, and it's about the choices you have, and that's why it's called bad habits. The more social media you get and the more fast food you get, the worse you are. And I chose this because I feel like people my age right now, social media is a really big deal.
The point is the experience. Certain teens were engaging their own parents, aunts, uncles, grandparents who all came there in really significant social issues in a very meaningful way.
These games are really hard to win, but we like how the gameplay is a metaphor.
It's having empathy. These games are one way of you being able to step inside the shoes of a character that you often don't get to in commercial games, and to actually feeling some empathy for that person's experience.
Let me provide a little more detail about the process of making the games. We started the project by introducing the teens to the concept of the art video game, or art game. Today's commercial video game is a massive endeavor, comparable to that of a blockbuster movie, with a huge staff and a multi-million-dollar budget. But art games are produced by one individual or a small group, often with very small budgets. Because they are not beholden to commercial interest, these games can be aimed at small audiences. As a result, art game makers have more freedom to address social issues and critique commercial video game conventions. This game by artist Pippin Barr is a recreation of a physical art experience, a performance by Marina Abramovich staged in MoMA several years ago. We had the teen artists play several art games that pointedly address social issues or contain a political critique. A well-known advocacy game is Darfur is Dying by Susana Ruiz. The art video game collective Mole Industria has made several games about contemporary life. We also had the teens play many of Mole Industria's games, including the McDonald's video game, a critique of McDonald's business practices. Next, we led a guided discussion in which we asked the teens to compare these video games to the contemporary games that they play, such as Grand Theft Auto. As the discussion evolved, the focus shifted to the often negative and stereotypical representations of people of color and women in contemporary commercial games. This led to a discussion regarding the lack of diversity within the commercial gaming industry, which stands in stark contrast to the demographics of the actual consumers who play the games, such as the teens themselves. Next, we asked the teen artists to generate possible themes for the games. We conducted a brainstorming workshop and compiled a list of social issues that the teens felt were not being adequately addressed or understood by people in the community, particularly adults. We worked together to whittle down the list and distill the issues into concepts that could work as video games. We then worked individually with each teen to further focus their game idea and to make sure that the social issue chosen was not being trivialized in its translation to game form. Concurrently, the teens started to create the 8-bit style artwork for the games using Piskel, a free 8-bit illustration software. We decided to make the games in the retro 8-bit style because it was easily achievable within the time frame of the project, and because employing this style would put the games in dialogue with the history of video games. Next, we worked with the teens to program the games using the Scratch visual programming language. As each of the game concepts evolved throughout the project, we continually tweaked the code to accommodate the changes. This iterative, collaborative process was repeated until a final playable version of each game was achieved. I would like to go into a little more detail about a video game featured in the film. One of our teen collaborators, Noah, was interested in the representation of African Americans in pop culture texts. He noticed that black characters are often cast as expendable sidekicks who never become the hero who saves the day. You can choose to play as either a white character or black character, locked in a room full of zombies. When you choose to play as the white character, you have to navigate through the zombies. Once you sustain 7 life-draining hits, an escape door will open and you have the opportunity to flee. Unfortunately, when you choose to play as the African American character, the zombies attack and each hit lowers your life. But this time, the escape door never opens. The game is stacked against you and you will always, unfortunately, die. This subtle use of gameplay brings to light white privilege. In this case, the rules of the game are stacked against the black character to the point where it is structurally impossible for him to win. Furthermore, if you only choose to play as the white character, the difference in the rules, your privilege, would remain invisible to you. In another game, a teen artist named Gary wanted to address racial profiling and police brutality. We were concerned that manifesting such a serious topic in video game form could trivialize the subject matter, and it might not make for a very compelling game. So we worked closely with Gary to develop the game as a training simulation for a rookie police officer before his first day on the beat. The white officer encounters several scenarios. 2 African American teens having a heated argument. An African American jogger. And another officer, white officer, beating an unarmed black teenager. With each scenario encountered, the officer must decide how he will respond. Another teen, Gerald, had the idea for a game she called Growing Up Black in Chicago. In it, you play as an African American teen living in Chicago, navigating your way through 4 years of public high school. If you successfully avoid negative influences, such as drugs and handguns, and steer clear of unwanted harassment by police officers, you increase your chances of graduating. We see the Street Arcade project as a critical, socially engaged work, and thus something unique within contemporary new media art and the independent video game community. At its most fundamental, it can be seen as what we call tactical pedagogy. We provided our teen collaborators with an opportunity to develop a set of technical and conceptual skills not offered in their schools. Even though we employed tactical pedagogy, the process we used in the Street Arcade was very different from that of a class. We think of it as radical co-creation. Each of us made important contributions to the collaboration. The plug-in studio developed and implemented the project, bringing along resources and technical skills along with years of experience facilitating group work and a commitment to socially engaged collaboration. The teens brought their own lived experiences as African American youth in Chicago, as well as a desire to express themselves artistically and engage their community in dialogue. If you would like to find out more about the Street Arcade, the Plug-in Studio, or contact me, please visit pluginstudio.net. Thank you very much.